Hello everyone, my name is Lemon Shark and welcome to 11 Kill Team Rules People Still Get Wrong. Number 1. Mortal Wounds versus Damage. Let's start with an easy one. On page 33 of the core rulebook, it states, each mortal wound inflicts 1 point of damage on the target model. Let's say you have a weapon or ability that does D3 mortal wounds. You roll, get 3 mortal wounds. Your target is a tactical marine with 1 wound. The first mortal wound does 1 damage and boom, you're done. Go ahead and get right to the injury roll, rolling only 1 dice because you did 1 damage. Need more proof? This is further clarified on page 32. If a model loses its last wound when there are still attacks or mortal wounds allocated to it, these are not resolved. Number 2. Who rolls the injury roll? Cool, now that we have that out of the way, we can dive right into injury rolls. There's a simple rule of thumb when it comes to injury rolls. Whoever does the damage rolls the injury. On page 31 we see inflict damage, where it clarifies the player controlling the attacking model makes an injury roll for the target model. Clear enough? What happens is that people skip over to page 32, where it says when a model's wounds are reduced to 0, the controlling player makes an injury roll for that model, conveniently skipping over the part where it says unless stated otherwise, for example, inflict damage on page 31. The reason the statement on page 32 exists is in the case of traps, dangerous terrain, or anything else that would cause you to do wounds to your own models. For your reference, this is further clarified in the Kill Team's designer commentary under Shooting Phase. Number 3. How many Psychers can cast psychic powers? This is important for games of Commander. It's another easy one. First paragraph, page 26 of the core rulebook. Each player can only choose a single Psyker in each battle round. So even though you may have a commander that is a Psyker and another model that is a Psyker, only one of them may cast any powers per battle round. Number 4. Morale, Order of Operations. Morale is crucial to Kill Team, and it comes down to multiple parts with their own terms and conditions. There are many steps here that people mess up on. The first part that I'll clarify is that nowhere in the nerve test modifier chart on page 36 does it say that flesh wounds impact the nerve test you make. Only that if a model has a flesh wound, it must take a nerve test. In other words, a model can have 3 flesh wounds, but that does not mean it takes a +3 on its nerve test. Next, let's just follow along the steps. First, check if your kill team is broken. Simple enough. Then, remove shaken tokens. This is important. If you had any models that were shaken last round, they are no longer shaken this round. You are given a chance to recheck if your models become shaken. Then, you take the nerve tests, and the order in which you do so can be very important. For each model that becomes shaken in this morale phase, the rest of the models that still have yet to take their test gain cumulative modifiers. If you have an important model that needs to take a nerve test, do that test first, because it will only get harder if you fail the nerve tests on other models. This is clarified in the Kill Team's designer commentary under morale phase as well. Once you and your opponents are done with your nerve tests, the morale phase is done. Number 5. Obscure versus line of sight. Here's one that I see a lot. I can see you with my gun so I can shoot you, but because you can't see my body, you can't shoot me. No, this is incorrect. The rules for line of sight and obscure are different and explained on different pages. The tricky part is that there isn't a place that clearly states rules for line of sight. Instead, you must read page 28 under Range and Visibility, where it states, stoop down and get a look from behind the shooting model to see if any part of the target model is visible from any part of the shooting model. That's the ruling on line of sight. If you can see any part of the target with any part of your model, even bits that are sticking out like guns and spikes, then you can target that model in the shooting phase. In most cases though, if you're talking about spiky bits shooting at spiky bits, both models will likely be obscured. This is outlined on page 30. Read it for yourself with the understanding that the rules for obscured are not the same as the rules for range and visibility. For further clarification, refer to the designer's commentary under Shooting Phase. Number 6. Types of rolls you can re-roll. In Warhammer 40k, you can reroll nearly any kind of roll that you make with a single command point. In Kill Team, they've placed a lot of critical limitations on what you can actually reroll. Under Tactical Reroll on page 65, it lists Advance Roll, Charge Roll, Psychic Test, Deny the Witch Test, Hit Roll, Wound Roll, Saving Throw, Injury Roll, or Nerve Test. These clarifications are super important. Hit rolls, wound rolls, saving throws, advance rolls, and nerve tests are generally made with a single die, unless otherwise specified by an ability. That's pretty straightforward. Charge rolls, psychic tests, deny the witch test, and injury rolls, however, involve multiple dice. When you use the tactical reroll tactic, you must reroll all of the dice in these rolls, not just one like you would in Warhammer 40k. That means both charge dice, both psychic dice, etc. For injury rolls, if you deal damage with a weapon that has a damage characteristic of, say, 3, you would roll 3 dice for the injury roll. If you then use the tactical reroll tactic, you must reroll all 3 of those dice because all of them are part of the injury roll. Don't believe me? Refer to page 32, where under their example they state, the player controlling the attacking model will roll 3 dice for the injury roll, applying the highest result. All 3 of those dice are part of the whole roll. That term is very important for all of these rolls. Do also note that nowhere under Tactical Reroll does it specify that you can reroll a dice for any abilities. For example, the Icon of Flame. These are rolls that cannot be rerolled. Number 7. Charge distance and direction. I don't blame people for getting this one wrong too often because it was a series of changes that came in the designer's commentary. So, I'm here to deliver it to you straight. You make a charge. It fails. Here's what it says. You have a choice. The model can stay where it is, or it must move as close as possible within the distance rolled to at least one target of its charge, which in most cases will mean using the full distance rolled and moving in a straight line. So if you fail that charge, you can't just move in the general direction of your target and then duck behind cover. If you choose to move that model, you must go as close as possible to your target or one of your targets. That may mean leaving the model out in the open. That's what it gets for charging headlong towards the foe. They added another key update to distances for charges. When it comes to models on different levels, you measure charge distances diagonally from base to base. It's as simple as that. Number 8. Pistols and how to use them. This is less a rules conundrum and more a clarification. Pistols have gotten a lot of flack for not being very effective in Kill Team. On the other hand, I see them as being a different type of strategy that you must be knowledgeable about to work around effectively. Plasma pistols, fusion pistols, flechette blasters, and others are very deadly when they get a chance to fire. However, there are many limitations that can stop you from firing them in close combat. If you charge or were charged in a turn, no pistols for you, thanks to the rules on page 30. However, it's the subsequent turn that things can get spicy. If you're still in close combat in the next battle round, you can fire pistols in the shooting phase in the fire at will phase. Don't want your enemy shooting those deadly plasma pistols at you? Charge them with another model to shut them down. Want to secure your right to shoot your pistols? Try to block your opponent from charging your pistol wielder. If pistols could be fired in the fire at will step, even after you charge or were charged, those risky charges that you made would be much less rewarding. After all, a plasma shot could take your model out of action with ease before you even get a chance to swing. That wouldn't be fun at all. Number 9. Falling back and the consequences. This is a critical change that came in the designer's commentary under movement phase. If a model falls back from one of my models, can my model declare a charge against them when it is my turn to act in that phase? The answer, no. Your model was within 1 inch of an enemy model at the beginning of the phase, so it can only remain stationary or fall back, but this move doesn't have to be backwards. This is an important addition. Falling back can get your models out of a hairy situation, but under the core rules themselves, the enemy could simply recharge you, keeping you locked in combat regardless of your efforts. Now, the enemy must either stay still, which could leave them out in the open, or fall back with all of the limitations that implies. Do note that if you choose to stay still instead of falling back after a model has fallen back from you, you are free to shoot your weapons in the fire at will step of the shooting phase. Number 10. Jumping and falling. These rules are ignored far too often. Far too often. It's probably because they're under advanced rules on pages 42 and 43 of the core rulebook, but I think they add a lot of extra fun and depth to games of Kill Team after your group has gotten comfortable with the basics. Go ahead and read them yourself sometime, and also consider the clarifications that I have for you. For one, if you're jumping, you're not falling. In other words, there's no way to voluntarily fall on top of an enemy model and end up in close combat. To do that, you must make a charge roll and jump down on your own. The only time you follow the falling rules is when you must make a falling test. That is, if you're within 1 inch of an exposed edge of a terrain feature that's up off of the game surface, and you get hit by an attack, note, not wounded, just hit, then you must make a falling test on a single d6. If you roll a 1, you fall. Move the model over the edge by the shortest route possible, then straight down until they hit a lower level. After that, you check to see if you take any falling damage. Roll a d6 for every 3 inches the model has fallen. For each roll of 5 up, they suffer 1 mortal wound. If the falling model would be placed on top of another model, make another roll as described above for the model underneath, using the same number of dice as for the falling model. So for example, if you fall off of an edge that's 9 inches up from the next level, you roll 3d6, and for every 5 up, you take a mortal wound. If you would land on another model, friend or foe, that model also would roll 3d6. Only in falling does it say this can bring them within 1 inch of an enemy model. Under jumping, they clarify, you cannot jump down within 1 inch of an enemy model unless you are making a charge move and that model was a target of the charge. There's more clarification on how these rules work in the designer's commentary under movement phase, so I recommend reading through that to make sure you've got a good understanding of how these rules work. They add a lot of fun to games of Kill Team, where you have snipers perched up on roofs or an enemy that likes to camp in a little raised castle. Forcing those sneaky models to make falling tests adds an extra level of excitement to the game. Number 11. Who controls objectives? We're going to wrap this up with a simple one. Who controls an objective? Whoever has the most models within 2 inches of the center of that objective, unless otherwise stated by another ability. That's it. Just wanted to make sure it's clear. That rule is on page 48 clear as day, and yet I myself messed it up on several games, thinking I could contest an objective simply by having 1 model on it when my opponent had 3 or more. We are all fallible. Alright, that does it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or need extra clarification on any rules. I'll do my best to answer as many questions as possible, and if I get enough, I'll make another video.